can see some angry faces, some sad faces here, and some text: caused, angry, disappointed, sad. What are some of the things that can make a graphic designer assume this demeanor? What are some of the things that can make a graphic designer, cry or get angry or have make unnecessary costs? You will get to know them along the way. That is why this is important, because if the work was not set well, if certain checklists, certain parameters are not considered before you send your work for print, it might end up being printed. And when you see your work, you will get some of these facial reactions. Either you are going to cry, you will be sad, you'll be angry, there will be cost, because you did not consider certain things before sending your printed file. That is why prepress is important. The activities that you are going to perform before you send your work for print. So as we proceed, now I'm going to give you the list of these items that you are supposed to check before you send your designs for print. Let me pass this across. Because prepress has to do with activities that the printer will do before printing your file. The reason this is important to us is that we have to understand what they do and then know what we can also do to our design, so that when it gets to the printer will not have issues. So we are going to have checklist, which is a list of items that as the graphic designer, you have to check, or I have to check on my computer with my design, even before I start the design, whilst I am doing the design, and after I have done the design, I'm saving the file for print. I have to check those things so that when it goes to the printer, they can also be able to produce what I am expecting from them. So quickly, this is a list of the items that are recommended that as a graphic designer, you pay attention to before your work is ready for print. With the understanding that we have gotten that there are a series of activities that the printer has to do. He has to check your color, he has to check your text, he has to check the size of your work and many things. Therefore, we have to do our homework first. So this tells us that most of the times, the works you send for print and then it doesn't come out as you expected. It is not always that it is the fault of the printer. Most of the times it is the fault of the graphic designers, which actually is what prompted the need for this webinar, because I experienced a lot of that and realized that most of the mistakes come from us, the designers, and we must pay attention to these things. So quickly, the checklist has to do one, we have grouped them into 6 points. The document setup, which has to do with the size of your artwork, the margins and the bleeds. We are going to explain them. The images and image resolution, color, which has to do with your colors and the color space in which you work and the use of black. Also, the font and the text that you use, how do you deal with them? Then the fifth one has to do with the print file that you are going to send for print. What format is best? What format should you use to avoid errors or mistakes after the print? Then we have a miscellaneous of general important issues or pressing issues that designers must take note of. So let's quickly plunge into the checklist. Before I continue, I want to let you know that at a point, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Mr. Ben, who will be our second speaker, to continue. And then he will also hand over to Mr. Nicholas Eyite to ride us to the end of this journey. So you should be expecting a changeover very soon. So I'm going to start with digital and offset print. And I'm going to do this together with Mr. Benedictus. So I'll hand over along the way to him. We have grouped them into 3. We have digital prints, which has to do, the first printer you are seeing on the left which has to do with digital prints that we all know, most of us I'm sure know about. Then the second aspect has to do with offset printing, which has to do with usually when you are printing a large quantity of items, let's say 100,000 flyers, 10,000 posters and all that. We print them on the offset printer. So we are going to look at how to deal with your files when you are printing digital and offset. Then Mr. Nicholas will take us to how to work with your files when you are dealing with large format print. If you are going to print your items on a large format, you are printing a banner, you are printing a billboard, you are printing a backdrop, you are printing labels, stickers, all those ones are done on a different kind of printer, which is called the large format or the plotter. So he will take us there. So we are using the checklist to go through the digital and offset. So your document setup, which is the first item on our checklist, anytime you are doing your work, you are doing your design, you must make sure we are talking about the size of your artwork and the orientation of your artwork should be correct. Most of the times, you are going to print a work that is, if you can see the illustrations here, the pictures here, you are going to print a work that is, you want to print it for me. What we realize, the mistake sometimes we do is that we still send the square format work to the printer that, oh, print a flyer for me. I want it to be A5. And if you do that, you are going to give the printer problems. Sometimes you don't know what happens behind the scene. The printer, if they are design inclined, they have to redesign it or rearrange the items on an A5, which is a waste of time, and they may even distort your design for you. So just be sure that anytime you are sending your work for print, it is in the original size that you want it to be. That is one. And then two, it must be in the right orientation, whether it is portrait or it is landscape or it is a custom size. Anyhow you want it, make sure it is the same as you want it that you are sending to the printer. So the second thing under the document setup you have to pay attention to is your margins and your bleeds. What are the margins? Let me skip to the next slide and then I'll come back here because there's a pictorial view. Okay, so from what you are seeing on your screen, you can see some arrows pointing to the right side, showing, and then the text on the right side here, and an artwork over there. There's a red outline around the artwork, there's a black outline, and there is some green rulers on it. Okay, I'm going to explain them quickly. So the red one you are seeing here is what we call the bleed line. Now the bleed line is the area where the background of your work, the color or the graphics should cover if they are to be printed to the edge of the leaflet. So if you are doing a design and you put a background color on it, for instance, what we have here, there is a background color of yellow at a portion of the design, and there is a picture that is also at the edge of the design, right? Then I must add what we call bleed, which is the extra space after I have set my work exactly A4, which is showing here with the black line, which is exactly A5. I have to add an extra space of about 3 millimeters or 5 millimeters. I'll show the values in the next slide. An extra space here, I just want you to understand it pictorially. The space in between the black line and the red line is what we call the bleed. It is the extra space you put on your work so that when after printing, the printer is cutting the work, they can get your color to be at the edge of the work for you. So that is what is the bleed. Then we have the trim line. The trim line is the black, which is the actual size of your work. So that is where the work will be cut. But we have to add extra, which we call the bleed. Okay, now we have margins and safe area. I believe you can see some green lines on the design over here. The green lines are rulers that I have put there to give me some breathing space on the edge of the design. So the bleed is actually, the margin is the space in between the green line and the black line, which is the space you leave on your artwork, which allows for a breathing space around your design. It also prevents it from getting to the edge of the design so that when they are cutting it, they will not cut off your text. Okay, so the margin is the space you leave around your artwork, which is part of your design. You leave that space around your elements so that they don't get to the edge of your design. The main reason is that when it is being cut, they will not cut off your text. The second reason is that when your work is, they are reading your work, there should be space around it so that the eye can rest when you are reading. So that is the reason why you need margins around your design. These are very important things that if you don't take note of and you send your work for print and the space around it is so tiny, you may end up seeing your final work and then the text is cut off. It's because you didn't leave enough margin, enough space around your items on the page. Thank you. So let me now give you these quickly. So margins must be set correctly. After we understand what margin is, we understand what bleed is. Margins must be set correctly. Bleed must be considered when you are working on a colored background and also when your images are flashing to the edge of the page. You must also check the settings that they are correct for any folds and any perforations that you want to do. So if you are doing a brochure and to be folded, you just have to make sure that you have left enough space for the folding so that when you do your work and it is folded finally, they will not fold on a text. Okay, so there's another example of bleed, trim line, and safe area. There's a business card. The red line is actually the size of your work, the trim area, exactly the size. That's 3.5 by 2 inches. Then you add an extra space, which is called the bleed. Then we have also what we call the safe area, space within your work that will prevent the text from being cut. So let's take this home. Bleed should be about 2 millimeters to 5 millimeters, depending on the work. So usually for business cards, you need about 2 millimeters extra space that you add to your work. And then if it is a book or whatever, you need about 5 millimeters. Okay, so 2 millimeters to 5 millimeters bleed. Then the margin, the space around your elements in the design should be at least 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter, which is safe for cutting. It can be bigger than that depending on your artwork. I hope we are getting it. If you are getting it, you can give me a wave, or if I'm going too fast also, you let me know. Okay, so let's go to the next item on the checklist. So the first item we have dealt with is the document. Now let's go to your images that you have used in your design. One, images. So let me show you another image here, then we go back. So what you are seeing on your screen here, what is on the left is an image of 300 dpi. Image resolutions are measured in dots per inch. Okay, so if you have a picture that you are going to use for your design, the computer recognizes or measures it in dots per inch. That is the pixels. Okay, so this image on the left is 300 dpi and at 100% zoom. Then the one on the right is 72 dpi at 150% zoom. What I want you to take away from here is that anytime you are using images in your work, if you are expecting a sharp image, a nice image, then make sure that you also use a sharp and a nice image. Some of the times you send a design, you do your design, you don't get a good image. The image is blur. It's like what is on the right. It's because the resolution is low. And if you use it for your design, don't expect to get something like what you are seeing on the left. The printer doesn't do that magic. So the magic comes from the designer. Make sure that you are getting images of good quality, which the resolution is high enough. There must be at least 300 dpi so that when you use it for your print, it will come out sharp as you want it to be. So next time, let's not go and fight our printers. If you have your work printed and the image is blurred, most of the time, it could be from the printer, but most of the time, we don't choose the right images at the beginning of the work. All right. So a quick giveaway. One, images must be 300 dpi resolution. Two, you must convert your images to CMYK, which Mr. Ben will elaborate on in the next one. So I wouldn't talk much here. Make sure that your images are converted from RGB to CMYK. He will explain. Then make sure that your images should be large enough to avoid pixelation. So what I explained in the image over there, the image should be of good quality enough. Number four, it is advisable that you use vector versions if you are dealing with a logo, icons, and infographics. So if you are doing a business card, you are doing a flyer, anything, usually the logo that you use, the icons you use, the infographics you use for your design, make sure that they are vectors. Vectors are the kind of files that usually you can produce with Adobe Illustrator and CorelDRAW and all. Those images, they are not pictures. They are actually drawn shapes, which doesn't usually pixelate. Okay, so you use vectors. I think this is a general idea for you to know what to check. So from here, you can also do further research. What is a vector? Then you understand it better. I'm hoping to do probably a tutorial on these ones also. Number five, images and graphics. You must make sure that your images and graphics are packaged well with your file when you are sending. So if you are sending a file for print, most of the time you should embed the picture into the design, because sometimes when you send it for print, the image can vanish from the design when they're about to print it. The link is broken. So you make sure that you embed your images into your design to avoid those things.